be presented as well. So machine guarding, if you're interested in this topic, I would say it is very helpful. But again, I would just want to mention um, what I can provide to you on the topic in this length of session is going to be very limited. I'm going to give you a lot of information about what machine guarding is, why it is used, where it can be found. Um, may not get in so far to the specifics on individual machinery. And if you can imagine, there are many different types of machines that OSHA does regulate, uh, some having very unique requirements, some having similar to others. But again, we want to cover the topic um, because it is important. OSHA does have a very focused enforcement effort on machine guarding and the hazards that that does present. Um, so machinery and amputation type hazards is something that OSHA has focused on for a number of years. So hopefully today you will be able to get some good information. But again, as I said, we always want to encourage, if you have questions, please put those into the chat or my information will be at the end of the presentation, my email address and my phone number. So if you would like to communicate with me, please, I would advise you to do so. And again, you could ask something very specific on a machine perhaps that you have that I may not be able to touch upon today with the time that we have allowed. So let's jump right in. All right, there it goes. Introduction, crushed hands and arms, severed fingers, blindness. The list of possible machinery related injuries is so long as it is horrifying. Safeguards are essential for protecting workers from the needless and preventable injuries. A good rule to remember is any machine part, function, or process which may cause injury must be safeguarded. You may hear words today that you should become more familiar with. I may use the word guard or I may use the word safeguard. So, where the operation of the machine can injure the operator or, notice it says other workers, the hazard must be controlled or eliminated. Again, it's important with machine guarding. Don't just think of the operator of the machine as the one that we need to provide and ensure their safety, but also some machine guarding regulations even go so far as to say, and other workers. So it may be the people in the vicinity. Causes of machine accidents. And I have a few bullet points here. And again, bear with me because we try to shorten the presentation so that we can cover the ones that we believe to be the most important. But very specifically, reaching in a machine to clear it. Think of a machine jam. And again, some machines are more prone to this particular issue than others, but not using proper lockout tagout on a machine, uh, unauthorized employees doing maintenance or using the machine, or missing or loose machine guards. Believe it or not, sometimes when machine guarding is an issue, I know I've done investigations where, believe it or not, the machine had a guard, but it had been removed for reasons. We took it off because we had to work on it. We took it off because we had to set the machine up. So there can be reasons. I'll say not all those reasons are acceptable, but again, machine guarding, again, very important. And if not considered or not looked at specifically, can cause many problems for the company and the people who use these machines. Where mechanical hazards occur, again, more information that you need to become familiar with, again, to the topic, machine guarding. The first bullet point says point of operation. Point of operation is very specific. This is where the work occurs on the machine itself. So it's the part where the machine perhaps comes together onto the product, So the point of operation is those things that could be pinch points, crushing hazards, things where the machine is closing and you want the operator or the people in the vicinity to be protected from. The second bullet point, again, where hazards can occur are machines which move, such as flywheels, pulleys, belts, couplings, chains, gears, feed mechanisms, the auxiliary parts of the machine, and running nip points. Again, these are all things that as a safety professional, you should be looking at with respect to machine guarding. Here's an example of point of operation. The point where work is performed on the material. Could be cutting, shaping, boring, or forming of stock. So again, it's the part of the machine in this particular slide where the blade is actually contacting the part. The point of operation is something that we always want to look for and consider when we are thinking of machine guarding. There is a definition in the OSHA standards that will define that, I believe, near identical to what it mentions here on the slide. It is the point where the work is performed. Rotating parts. Again, people sometimes say, well, what am I expected to guard? And I say, well, think of the things that can cause injury. And again, many machines, even in service today, they could have been made years ago, right? I saw some machines just recently, and in talking to the company representative, I said, when do you think this machine was actually produced, made, you know, and I believe we both come to the conclusion that it was probably made either at or around the time of World War II. And again, the machine's still functional, it still works. It was, obviously making money for the company. But if you can imagine, from then up until now, uh, regulations have changed considerably. OSHA was not created until 1970 at the federal level. So think of a machine that perhaps was made many, many years ago that does not have adequate guarding. And with that, I would even go so far as to say, question we sometimes get, if you purchase a machine today, go to a store, Sears, Craftsman, I like that product, I like that brand name. Can you buy a machine at Sears that does not comply with OSHA standards? And the answer to that is yes, you can. Surprisingly enough, people will ask, well, how can I buy it at the store and use it if it doesn't comply with OSHA? And I said, well, the quick answer is the companies that make the machines are not required to comply with my regulations. It's the company that has a worker, an employee using the machine that must comply with OSHA standards, right? So you can buy a machine at the store, even today, that does not comply with OSHA standards. Now, again, I don't want to disparage Sears or Craftsman, but in most cases, if you asked the manufacturer of this type of equipment for guards or things that would be considered OSHA compliant equipment, they will typically say, yes, we do have that, but that's an additional cost, but we could sell that, right? We can make that available and sell it to you. So you or I go buy it and use it at home, right? We may not necessarily want to pay extra for those guards, but if it's a company that buys this machine, think of a radial arm saw for woodworking. Absolutely. You take that machine and put it in the factory, now have employees using it. That machine needs to have the guards that were required by OSHA regulations. For woodworking equipment and general industry, that would be 1910.1, or I'm sorry, 213. So again, machine guarding could be one of those tricky things. I don't want to say it's difficult. It's just you need to understand perhaps what you could be facing if you buy machinery or have machinery that may be old, or for that matter, machinery that is new. Rotating parts, back to our topic here. I digress, I apologize. Rotating parts are one of the areas that, yes, guarding is required. So look at pulleys, look at uh, wheels, flywheels, sprockets, rotating parts, things that can either grab you or pull you into them. Um, Looking at the slide, as you can see, we point out that it does have a burr on that flywheel. Yeah, that burr would be something, right? We would very much want to ensure that no one makes contact with that because, again, that would cause injury. Um, some of the couplings that have bolt heads that are projecting, that again, that's another issue that should be guarded. Um, Fixed guard, something that would prevent contact um, on that rotating part. In running nip points, again, this from a safety standpoint, people should also recognize, starting on the left, for the rotating cylinders. If you can imagine the rotation of those um, parts, on one side of it has what would be called an in running nip point, meaning that if you were to contact that with your finger, with your hand, um, it would pull you into that machine. Okay, that's a bad thing. That's what you want to safeguard or protect the worker from that exposure. Um, Going to the next one with the chain and sprocket, again, it's a rotating piece of equipment. It does, depending upon the direction of that rotation, as you can see at the bottom, it says nip point. Nip point means that's the part that's going to grab or pull you into it. Um, the end where it's coming off, not necessarily as dangerous, but I mentioned that only because if this particular machine goes clockwise, but what if it is able to also be reversed and go counterclockwise at some point? It could need guarding on both sides of that point where the chain comes onto that sprocket. Does that make sense? We're worried about being pulled into that machine. So where you have that nip point, that is the part that we, OSHA, want you to guard or safeguard. The other one with the belt and pulley, again, has very similar. As you can see, they're pointing out with the rotation of the pulley. It has, in this illustration, two nip points. The rack and pinion, again, it's rotating. As you can see, it's going to the right. It has a nip point, but if it also comes back to the left, it has a nip point on the opposite side. So again, good illustration of what you should be looking for to guard these particular instances where nip points could be harmful to the operator. Requirements for safeguards, again, bullet point, to prevent contact, prevent workers' body or clothing. I'm glad that it does say the word clothing, because think of the other parts of the body that, again, you got your hands, I understand, or your feet, but think about long hair, jewelry, things that when you lean over or you're in such proximity to the machine can become caught, um, need to be protected so that you don't have contact with the machine. Um, Second bullet point, secure, firmly secure the machine and not easily removed. I would say what they're speaking to there is the guard itself. If you have a guard on a machine, it should be attached in such a way that it is not easily removed, meaning that I always give people the example. If you have a tool such as a wrench where you tighten the fastener, right, the hardware, the bolt, the nut, I would say that would not be easily removed, and that somebody couldn't just, work it off with their fingers. So when you secure a guard or a safeguard device, it should be on in such a way that someone can't bypass it willingly. Um, it should be accessible, perhaps like by maintenance personnel. But again, don't just put a guard on with a zip tie or put a guard on with like a wing nut. I would say that's that's very easily defeated. Put it on with some bolts, fasteners, so that, you're putting it on and it's there and it's working as it should. Protection from falling objects. Make sure that there's no objects that can fall onto your moving parts. Again, think of this, again, could be back to what we had mentioned with the use of tools. Sometimes I walk by a machine and it's got, some moving parts on it. It's got some nice looking guarding, but I look and there's an oil can here. There's a tool bag there. Okay, yeah, you don't want things like that to fall onto the machines. So, storage is important. Keep things back. Create no new hazard. Make sure you must not have shear points, jagged edges, or unfinished surfaces. And again, that's you don't want to, as any safety professional will tell you, you don't want to create more hazards when trying to protect workers from a hazard. Think of, in this case, if it's a sharp edge, expanded metal, if you've ever seen that type of web um, material made of metal. It's very good for machine guarding because, again, in that case, you would be able to see through it, perhaps. Um, Sometimes we see that they don't protect the edges, and it becomes a laceration hazard to where you could cut yourself by just grabbing and touching it. So no interference. Make sure, or to prevent workers from performing the work quickly and comfortably. I would say to that point, most guarding that I see, I like to see bolted in place so that it could be removed if needed. What I typically tell people they should not do is like weld it or attach it in such a way that it's hard to get off. Because if I'm saying it's hard to get off, I'm going to say it's probably just as hard to put it back in place. So if you weld the guard on the machine, um, with the expectation that it does need to come off to service the equipment, I can almost assure you that they will not weld it back on. They will just discard the guard. They will discard it in such a way, right, that it doesn't go back on. The last one is also, again, very important. Allow for safe lubrication. A lot of machines need lubrication, oils, greases, things like that. Make it so that the machine can be serviced, maintained, uh, without having to put the maintenance person in harm's way. So again, questions on that, that's always a good discussion with a safety person. How can I build this so that, my maintenance crew aren't putting themselves in such a position, especially if it's, if you're just greasing the machine with a grease gun. Okay, well, try to make it so that the grease fittings are accessible, right? Don't have the employee climbing all over the machine simply in order to service it. Let's go to the next one here. Methods for machine guarding. All right, these are going to be examples, things that you should be familiar with. And we tell people, again, a lot of things with safety or OSHA in general, it's a learning process. So if you're not familiar, some of these things may be new. If you are, I would think it should be more of a review. But when we say guards can come in different forms, different types. For guards, we have fixed, we have interlocked, we have adjustable, we have self-adjusting. I could give you examples of all of those in the following slides. But if we come down to the next bullet point, it says devices. What are machine safeguarding devices? Okay, that could be present sensing. Present sensing could be, think of like a light curtain. Could be a floor mat that has a sensor on it so that if somebody is standing on it, right, the machine is, not able to operate. So present sensing is something that people should consider if a guard, whether it be fixed or adjustable, is maybe not applicable. Other devices, pullbacks and restraints. Pullbacks, again, examples on some of the future slides are actually, as they're so titled, they're pulling back the employee's hands as they load the machine, and then when the machine cycles, it pulls their hands back so that they're not in that point of operation. Safety controls, whether they're tripwire cables, two-hand controls, or gates. I have a photograph, I believe, of different types of gates. And again, a gate is going to be a box that has a gate on it, and it's closing the machine for the point of operation, again, to protect the operator. The next bullet point is location or distance. And believe it or not, some machines you can actually use distance separation of the worker to the machine. That can be a safeguarding method that is acceptable. Feeding and ejection methods. So again, if you're feeding the machine or ejecting it, right, the part is formed, you pull it out, can be automatic, can be semi-automatic, can have robots, right? So again, there's many methods to safeguarding machinery. Miscellaneous aids could be awareness barriers, protective shields, or hand feeding tools. So, if I've got a long handle set of pliers, some machines you can use that to place the part in the machine as opposed to putting your hand in there, right? You're trying to protect the worker. And if by using hand feeding tools, maybe the part is hot, right? Think of some of the other environmental conditions. If you're forming a metal part that has perhaps been heated for heat treatment reasons, right? You don't want to touch it, so you're using a pair of long handle pliers. Again, these are all considered methods of safeguarding. All right, the first one here, fixed guards. As you can see from the picture here, this is two examples, one being the flywheel on the left. As you can see, it has a very nice looking fixed barrier. The fixed guard provides a permanent part on the machine, preferable to all other types of guards, because again, it's in place. It's not something that, comes and goes. If you're looking at it, it does have what appears to be the expanded metal on the outside. Again, that's preferable if you need to see, look into, or beyond the guard. The requirements for the openings on that expanded metal, try to use my hands here. If you've ever seen that, right, it's sort of a grid pattern. There are some requirements about the openings, right? On well, how big is the opening allowed to be on that expanded metal? And I said, well, I can give you some numbers. And again, you're trying to prevent access or someone from getting caught or hit with the moving parts. So if you tell me how big the opening is, I can tell you how far away from the actual hazard it must be. And again, we have sort of a scale that we use. And again, it's in the OSHA regulations that's sort of acceptable in that the larger the opening, if you can imagine, the farther away from the hazard you need to be. So if you're telling me, the opening on our guard is, 2-3 inches, I'm going to say, all right, well, 2-3 inches, let me look at my little scale, and I can provide that to you. It's in 1910 217 table 010, I believe it's table 010. But again, it's considered a chart for the opening versus the distance. And again, if you can imagine, it's sort of just on the profile of what would be your hand, right? So you don't want it, if you're so close to what's going to harm you, you wouldn't want the opening large enough to put your finger through it, right? But if you're telling me, well, our guard has a hole that big in it, I'm going, okay, how far away are you? Because I could probably put my arm in through that hole, and you don't want someone to be caught by the machine, right? So these guard openings, I will tell you, are important because the OSHA compliance officer, right, we will measure these things and say, okay, I see that you've guarded it, but it looks like your guarding is not adequate. Let's go to the next one. A guard that has an interlock, right? Again, interlocks are good in that when this type of guard is opened or removed, the tripping mechanism and or power automatically shuts off, disengages, and the machine cannot cycle or be started until the guard is back in place. So again, the illustration here is a revolving drum, but it has a interlock guard on it. Think of like a trash compactor. You ever see the trash compactors out on the loading dock where they're emptying garbage? Yeah, that's got an interlock on that machine. And that guard that you pull down, right, it has to be in place before that machine can cycle. Again, an example of an interlock guard. Very good, very good. I haven't checked, but please somebody tell me if we have a question or a chat that pops up. Oh, I do see some here. Let me look. Okay, just says the chat is open, so if you have questions, please, post them. But an adjustable guard. An adjustable guard, it's using the example here of a bandsaw. A lot of people have these. It's using the bandsaw blade has an adjustable guard, depending upon the material, the size that you're cutting, that can be adjusted. As a compliance OSHA person, I always tell people the part of the blade that you're using. I don't know. Give me an example. If you're cutting a piece of, wood, I'll use my phone. That's half-inch thick. I would say that blade the adjustable guard needs to be adjusted down so as to only allow for one material to go through the blade. But the part of that blade that is unused, that must be covered, that must be guarded, right? So if you're familiar with this machine, it's always important to look at your bandsaw to consider the unused portion of the blade. Is it guarded? And again, this is another example. I sometimes see these machines and they're new machines and they don't have that particular guard on it. And I say, hey, you need something on that. And again, can you fabricate your own guards? I don't have anything that says you cannot do that. I would say the guard should be made, fabricated so as to be substantial and that it will provide the protection you want. So I guess what I'm saying is if it's made out of metal, that's good. What sometimes I've seen people make guards out of other materials. That's maybe not good. If the guard's made out of plexiglass, okay, yeah, plexiglass can be thick enough, hard enough. You can see through it. That's a good thing. But don't make guards like out of cardboard. Believe it or not, I had the occasion somebody put a guard on that was made out of cardboard, and I went, okay, yeah, no, that's not. I don't like that one because to me, it'd be easy to defeat that, right? Somebody just tear the cardboard off. So if you are making guarding, I would say contact the equipment manufacturer because, as I said earlier, right, they may have the guard for that machine, and they would, I'm sure, want to sell it to you, right? They would say, absolutely, we do have that guard, and give me the make, model, number of the equipment, and I can sell that to you. But just the same, I have people say, well, if we can fabricate it, we're going to do that ourselves. And I say, just have someone do it that maybe has a very good understanding of what machine guarding is, and don't put something on there that's going to be a hazard, right? Remember what we said, don't create a hazard by trying to protect workers from one. So, but it's a good example of an adjustable guard. Let's go to the next one here. I think we're moving through nicely here. A self-adjusting guard. Again, the example it's giving here is appears to be a table saw. Again, this type, it provides a barrier which moves according to the size of the stock entering the danger area. So again, the guard is in place, but as you move the what appears to be a small furring strip, perhaps through the blade, right? The guard raises up, and then as the wood passes through, the guard comes back down. So again, it is protection. Can you still get injured or hurt on that machine? Absolutely, right? Hand placement is very important with that particular woodworking equipment. But that again is another type of guard defined as self-adjusting. If you can also see in that picture, it has the kickbacks. Do you see the little things that are hanging down? That's another guarding requirement under 213, the woodworking equipment. Again, the purpose of that is so that the stock doesn't kick back, right? Doesn't hurt you by being thrown back at the operator. So again, a self-adjusting guard. Another example. Pullback. If you're not familiar with this type of machinery, that in the picture is a mechanical power press.
Hey, Mark.
Yes.
You're breaking up a little bit with your volume. I don't know if you're touching your microphone or what.
I'll try not to.
Or maybe get closer to your microphone.
Oh, sure. Adjust that. Is that better? Tell me if it continues to break up. I guess I could switch out or try.
So you're good now. I'll let you know if you start to break up again.
Very good. The pullbacks again are another safeguarding device. It utilizes a series of cables that attach to the operator's hands and wrists, primarily used for machines with a stroking action or where the machine is cycling. This is big for, if you can imagine, people that are doing small parts and they're feeding the machine with their hands. So again, pullbacks are acceptable. I would only caution you that if that is the type of machine you have, please make sure that those pullbacks are adjusted properly. Because if you can imagine, not everyone has the same body shape, style, and length. And so if you put these pullbacks on, and somebody at the end of your shift puts them on, if they have longer arms, right, they're going to be able to reach further. So the pullbacks have a very specific adjustment requirement. I see. Oh, we have a question. Can you talk about when we shouldn't wear gloves when working around machines? Yeah, for example, I've heard that we shouldn't wear gloves when working on a CNC router. So does that mean we can't wear gloves when loading our metal sheets onto the metal beds? I would say the glove issue to me is when you're worried that you're going to get caught, right? The glove gets pulled into the machine, which is, yeah, that's a problem. You should be very careful, mindful of that hazard. But just the same, I would say if you're loading the machine with, metal sheets, to me, as soon as I hear metal sheets, I'm thinking sharp edges. Yeah, don't allow someone to suffer lacerations while doing that. Around the machines, I would say, think of the glove as if it has the opportunity where it's going to grab you or pull you in, right? Because the glove would be just like your sleeve, or what we were talking about with long hair. If it has that chance to grab you and then pull you in, that's a hazard. So you should be thinking of that. If you have that opportunity, we talked earlier about the tongs or those pliers that you can use to maybe feed, right? Sometimes you'll see people, instead of putting their hand at that point of operation where you could be, hit, think about the tool, right? You're using that pair of pliers to feed the machine so as to try to give you some distance, right? To keep your hand back. Um, the work with the gloves, I would say I can probably find some information because again, there's information on that, and it probably even gives some examples of what types of machines you should not wear gloves around. Um, and I can probably look for that further. But again, I think it's a very good question. I would say if you're using gloves in order to handle metal sheets, I would say you should for sure think about that. If the parts that you have to put in the machine, um, you know, if you can't wear gloves on the machine because of that fear of being pulled into it or being caught, then perhaps again think of, as we'd said with those, you know, do you have a tool that you could use? But that's a good question. And if we need more information on that, I would just add, let's talk after we're done today, and we can for sure help you with that in more detail. Um, let's see. Pullbacks, again, it's showing the example of when you're putting your hands in the die. Hands and die, meaning the die is the part of the machine that's coming together, uh, that's forming the part. So again, some machines you have to put your hands in. And as you can see, the pullbacks on the person's hands and wrists are there so as to when the machine cycles, if you can see the other picture, it literally pulls the employee's hands back. So it works. It's something that they have used for years, and it's still acceptable. It's a form of safeguarding. I would say, in my experience, when I've investigated or looked at this, it's simply um, an issue when they don't adjust them properly, right? And the employee is injured because their hand is not pulled out of that point of operation. So, um, continuing to go, the restraints. Restraints look like the pullbacks, but the restraints, and again, an acceptable form of safeguarding. The restraints you're connecting to the worker, again, hands and wrists, but it is not allowing you to even reach as far into the machine. So it's restraining you from a distance so that you can never, right, have your hand inside the point of operation, right? So uses cables and straps, must be adjusted to let the operator's hands travel within a predetermined safe area. Hand feeding tools are often necessary if the operation involves placing material into the danger area, right? So that gives you that, you get a pair of 12-inch pliers so you can reach that last 12 inches to get you inside the machine. So again, restraints are, we see them on machines sometimes. The one in the picture looks like a press brake. Again, common piece of equipment, machine shop. And restraints are, I would say, an acceptable form of safeguarding. Safety tripwire cables. Again, when you have machines, certain types of machines, think of rollers, the device is located around the perimeter or near the danger area, and the operator must be able to reach the cable to stop the machine. So again, tripwire cables, again, another form of safeguarding. My point on that, I would say, is if you're using that, I hope the machine can stop quickly, because if it's a heavy machine or it has a lot of energy, you don't want to be wrapped up in it, um, simply because the machine didn't stop when you fell into it. So with the tripwire cables, I would say that can work. That would be acceptable safeguarding if it's on a machine where you can, yes, protect the worker from injury by tripping that cable. Uh, Safety tripwire. Two-hand controls, again, another very practical way of, you're protecting the worker, the operator of the machine, because you are, in this case, requiring them to have constant concurrent pressure on the buttons to activate the machine, right, to get it to cycle. The operator's hands are located at a safe location and at a safe distance from the danger area when the machine completes its closing cycle. So again, you're using a few points there that you're occupying their hands, and you're doing it so that they can't be in the machine when the machine cycles. Now, obviously, there are limits to this with size. I guess I've seen machines so large, right? If you can imagine large ones that somebody could walk into, you don't want those buttons so close as for them to be able to cycle it while they're in it. So that's why the distance requirement is there, that you are of such distance so that you have to be away from that danger area. So again, two-hand control is works very well when used properly. A gate, again, some of these are very unique. Mechanical power presses, people, I guess, sometimes say, well, we don't even have those. So if you do, there are some very specific requirements for mechanical power presses under the OSHA standard 1910.217. But the example here for the gate is movable barrier device which protects the operator at the point of operation before the machine can cycle. That's an A gate. That's the one on the left. A B gate, again, has the same concept, but it says if this gate does not fully close, the machine will not function. So again, good examples of safeguarding with barriers. And again, if they're used properly, they work very well. I'm trying to get through some of these. I'm trying to watch the time. Safeguarding by distance or location, if you can see in the picture. This gentleman appears to be working what looks like a sawmill woodworking operation. But as you can see, the controls are at a distance. You locate the machine or its dangerous moving parts so that they are not accessible or do not present a hazard to a worker during normal operation. You maintain a safe distance from the danger area. So again, very practical and compliant with what OSHA would need with respect to machine guarding on this particular type of machine. Here's one for the feed, right? If you're feeding your machine, in this case, you have what appears to be some flat metal, and you're, punching out parts. There are guarding requirements for this as well. And again, it's using a few examples in that as the material, in this case, is coming off the roll, it is going through the machine. As you can see, it looks as though it's completely guarded around it. And then it's dropping the finished parts at the bottom. So again, all good examples of a automatic feed system. A robot, again, we see more and more of these in factories and production areas now. So robots have very specific guarding requirements. Again, I would say the machine that load and unload stock, they can be best used in high production processes requiring repeated routines where they prevent other hazards to employees. So as you can see, there's a fixed barrier that goes around it. The gate, as you can see at the front, I'm sure that gate has an interlock on it, right? So if that gate were to open, that robot will stop. It's de-energized in that it will not cycle. Robots, again, because they come in all shapes and sizes, you really need to, think of what protection you need for the workers who are in the vicinity of this machine. Because of the work they do, they usually need a lot of room. So that's why you usually see the guarding or the barriers, pulled back from a distance. so as to allow the machine to, go through its motions. So, um, protective shields, again, these are things that machine guarding would include. These do not give complete protection from the machine hazards, but do provide some protection from flying particles, splashing, cutting oils, or coolant. So the two examples I see, the one on the left is the uh, guard for the drill press. We see that. Um, the one on the right is the lathe that has the rotating hazard. That particular shield, I will say, is exactly what it is, because there is a shield that goes over that for the rotating hazard. The guard itself is, sort of like a half moon shape looking. It usually is a foldable, it's on a hinge, so it pulls up, goes down. You're protecting the worker from the chuck, which is rotating and it's not smooth. The little plexiglass shield there, yeah, that's just sort of keeping the stuff that's coming off the part there from hitting you. So that little shield is not really protecting you from the hazard of the rotating equipment. These, again, examples of the holding tools used to place and remove stock in these danger areas we talked about, not to be used instead of machine guarding, but as a supplement. So again, you can't have a machine that does not have guarding or safeguarding and use this simply as your sole means to protect workers, but it could be used as a supplement. So that's why we do like to see them. If I see people using them, I usually ask them a few questions. One of the big things with these types of tools is they should not be made out of hardened steel, right? Something that will not withstand the force. Again, I'll give you an example. If the machine cycles and you had the part holding it with the pliers, what if the machine hits the pliers and not the part? You don't want that pair of pliers to become a projectile, or to be break apart. And that could happen if, again, you got to imagine the force or the energy that these machines have, right? If they're closing, they can have several tons of energy. So when you use these holding tools, I always believe, or I say, they should be made out of material. Think of aluminum, something that will just crush it. But if it's made out of, some kind of hard carbide steel, it won't crush, but it'll shatter. So when you think of or look for these types of safeguarding holding tools, um, make sure that they're used or intended for that purpose. And again, I can show you, examples if you were to search for them, because again, they're going to be made out of some soft material like aluminum, and not, hardened steel. But fans, again, we see fans. Again, this is another example. Trying to just get you, prepared for guarding. Uh, the particular pictures that we're looking at says when the periphery of the blades of the fan is less than 7 feet from the floor, or I'm sorry, above the floor or working level, the blades must be guarded with a guard not having openings no larger than a half inch. Okay. Again, with what we've already learned and discussed. Why is it a half inch? Well, again, think of, you don't want your finger, you don't want to be able to touch the rotating blade. So that's why these guard openings, right, are of such size. If you have a larger opening, then the guard needs to be farther away, right? So again, you're not being able to reach it. The picture on the left, though, actually shows it looks like it's a cloth netting. You see how he's pushing on it, and it's just going right into the blade. So I would say that would be a bad example of guarding, because it's not made of such material as to perform right the way you want the guard to perform. But yeah, some of these old fans that we see in the factories, right? They're, they don't have the best guarding on them because again, they may be old, they may be, not intended for industrial use. Um, but again, the idea is, protect the worker, somebody, so you can't be hit by the rotating parts. Abrasive wheels. This is again another common 1910.215 guarding issue that we come across during OSHA inspections. And there's some very specific requirements if you look into that OSHA standard. The work rest, which as you can see, that's what the arrows are pointing to, must be kept adjusted closely to the wheel, maximum opening of 1/8 of an inch. And this is again to protect the person using that as a result of the wheel breakage, right? If the wheel were to fail, come apart. There's some requirements, again, 1/8 inch. The other part to that grinder is the tongue guard, which is again the part at the very top where the arrow is pointing. This is adjusted as the wheel begins to wear, get smaller. You need to adjust that tongue guard. The requirement says to not exceed 1/4 of an inch. So again, the idea of these particular guards are as so impossible or possible to protect the worker as much if the wheel were to break. So again, very common. We do see this. This is cited quite often because most machine shops or maintenance departments, they're probably going to have a bench grinder somewhere that does have the abrasive wheel on it. So trying to, again, watching the time, trying to get through some of this. Belts and pulleys, power transmission apparatus. So again, I apologize. The photo it looks old. It looks dated. The requirement for power transmission apparatus is under 1910.219. And again, it does qualify that when this equipment is less than 7 feet from the floor or working platform, these types of equipment must be guarded. So again, is it within reach, right? 7 feet, I can hold my arm up and I can touch 7 feet. So if it's the belts, the pulleys, chain drives, yeah, all these fall into 219, the OSHA standard for guarding, and must be protected so as to prevent someone from connecting. Machine safety responsibilities. Again, we always point to, okay, management, right? The company officials should ensure that all machinery is properly guarded. Very good bullet point. Supervisors work for the company, but they should train the employees on specific guarding rules in their area, ensure that the guards remain in place and are functional, and immediately correct machine guarding deficiencies. Oh, I do see another question on the chat. Let's see. Are these shields protected devices sold separate from the machines that you are showing us? And if so, how do we find businesses who sell these? I would say most of the time you can find aftermarket equipment, shields included. I always tell people to start with the manufacturer of the equipment, right? So like if it's a Sears Craftsman machine, start with Sears Craftsman, because they're going to say, well, what make, model equipment do you have? And then I would think, say, well, this is what we offer. But again, if you got a larger, think of a machine that's not meant so much for residential use, which most Craftsman equipment, right? They sell to citizens, right? Like you or I, to use at home. Think of a large industrial piece of machinery that's probably only made for, a large factory. I would advise, yeah, I would say contact the manufacturer of the equipment and say, excuse me, I have questions on your guarding. And they'll say, well, what do you have? Right? They want to start with, well, the machine you have, did you buy it new or did you buy it used? Because, if you buy it new, I would hope they're wanting to sell you the guards and shields when you first purchase it. But most definitely, when people buy something from another, you know, secondhand or from some other seller, they're going to maybe not include all the machine guards devices. So, but if you need more help, I would, think of there's Granger, there's industrial suppliers out there that do a lot of machine equipment. There's some companies I know. Rockford is a company that specializes in machine guarding, right? That's their business. So yeah, we can for sure get you some information that would help you, because again, the first thing I would always point to is what type of machine do you have? Because a woodworking machine is going to be different than a mechanical power press, right? It's just because the machines do different type of work. So, but very good question. Where do we find this? I would say start with Google, you know, Yahoo, you know, look for it. Think of the consensus standards that may be available, right? Those are the industry standards like ANSI, um, that the OSHA standards in most cases derive from the industry consensus standards, right? Um, but very good question. Back to the slide. Employees should be uh, trained so as to not remove guards unless the machine is locked and tagged, right? Lockout tagout is a big issue with machines when you're operating it, right, in a functional operational mode. You're making parts, you're making widgets. Yeah, the guard should be working in place. But if, the machine is in need of service, uh, you may have to take those guards off. Okay. Make sure that the person that's doing that is authorized, right? They know how to do it. They know what steps to take before they perform that service or maintenance. So that's why lockout tagout is always a big issue. OSHA, we would ask that question, report machine guard troubles to supervisors. If something needs attention, absolutely. Please tell the company that so that they can get the machine worked on. You do not operate the equipment unless the guards are in place, right? Employees sometimes will turn the machine on and they start working. Okay. Um, they should know what guards are required or what safeguarding is required, and make sure that the training of these employees and operators are completed, and that if the machine is not in a serviceable condition, the employees should know not to use it, right? You lock it out, put a tag on it, say this is not to be used until it is, maintained or serviced properly. So operator training, hazards associated with the machine. Yep, that's a very good point to make. The company should always train the employee what the machine is capable of, how to use it safely, right? Think of the manual. The machine or equipment manual will give you, in most instances, steps that should be taken before using that machine. How and why to use the safeguards, how and when the safeguards can be removed and by who, what to do if the safeguard is damaged, missing, or unable to provide protection. All of these things that we've talked about, whether it's the guard or the safeguard, those things perhaps do need attention over time. Think of the pullbacks we were talking about. Yeah, those things will wear out after a while, right? So again, if they're not functioning or working as they should, take them out of service, get new ones. So again, all important parts to training the operators, the people who use the machine. OSHA does have a national emphasis. I wanted to throw this in again. Don't have time to go through it in detail, but there is a link at the bottom there that'll get you to the web page on the OSHA site that will give you information. And if you don't understand what I just said was the national emphasis program, that means that OSHA has inspection protocol. We go out and do inspections looking for machines to reduce or eliminate amputation hazards. So it doesn't have to be a complaint, doesn't have to be an accident. You could have OSHA knock on your door, company, and say, hey, we're here to do an inspection because of our emphasis program. We believe you have machines that pose this type of hazard. So if you got questions on that, again, follow up with an email and I'll try to talk to you in more specifics. But there is a national emphasis program on manufacturing industry, looking at machine guarding issues. Here's another, again, PowerPoint. I wanted to throw in some resources. I don't want to take all the thunder away from Dave, but there are PowerPoints much longer, much more detailed than the one I'm doing here today. This one is actually from the state of Pennsylvania, Department of Labor and Industry. Again, there's a link at the bottom. This one is on machine guarding, and I guess don't quote me, but I believe it's about 50 slides, and it has, again, good information on the particular topic, machine guarding. Our consultation service here in Pennsylvania, they have some very good resources. And again, the slide that I have here is one of their videos on the topic of machine guarding. Again, all excellent resources to give you more information and to provide you with resources to help you. OSHA Federal Compliance Assistant Resources, again, on our publications page, we have specific OSHA pages on machine guarding. We have booklets, pamphlets, fact sheets. Again, all of these can be found, downloaded from the OSHA website, the link at the bottom of the page. The green book there that's entitled Safeguarding Equipment, nice magazine style, it's about 70, 80 pages, has a lot of pictures of, again, various types of machines. So you could, download that. It's a very good resource if you don't have that. Again, consultation contacts, again, these are the ones not just for Pennsylvania, but also list the other states that we have in Region 3 OSHA. And again, Dave is going to talk in more specifics because the OSHA consultation service is very important and we want people to consider or take advantage of that. So in summary, safeguards are essential for protecting workers from the needless and preventable machine-related injuries. The point of operation, as well as other parts of the machine that move while the machine is working, must be safeguarded. A good rule to remember is any machine part, function, or process which may cause injury must be safeguarded. My disclaimer and my email contact right there. I appreciate any follow-up questions, but I don't want to take up any more time because I want to give Dave some time. Dave's going to talk to you about the OSHA consultation service, which again, I would encourage anyone to look into further because they can help you comply with federal OSHA requirements. So thank you. Dave, I'm going to stop.
Yep. Sounds good.
Okay. There it goes. There it goes. And I'm going to mute.
Can you see that?
Yeah, I'll be watching the chat. But
okay, perfect. Can everybody see my first slide there?
No, I don't see it.
No,
Hang on.
I don't see it yet, Dave.
Okay, hang on. Let me. Just give me 1 second. Can you see it now?
Nothing yet.
I'm almost there, I think.
There you go.
You good?
We just need to see
Yeah.
it. Yeah, there you go.
Very
Perfect.
good. Sorry about that. I think we're good now. Just to introduce myself real quick, my name is Dave Yanoschick. I'm with the OSHA Consultation Program out of the Indiana University of Pennsylvania. And just for the next couple minutes here, I'd just like to talk briefly about the services we provide for small businesses in Pennsylvania. OSHA Consultation is, although OSHA's kind of in the title, we're separate from OSHA enforcement. What OSHA Consultation is, it's a free service that's mostly federally funded, partially funded out of the Pennsylvania Department of Labor, where what we're geared to do is assist small businesses in complying with OSHA regulations. And when I say small business, typically the OSHA definition for small business is establishments that have less than 250 employees at the site, in less than 500 corporate wide. So those small to medium-sized businesses are really who we're geared to help. And typically the logic behind that is that's when you get to smaller sized businesses, oftentimes they may not have the expertise on site and or the resources to help interpret the regulations, comply, et cetera. So that's kind of who we're geared towards. If a business submits a request, we give priority to the employers that are in high hazard type industries involved in specific hazardous operations, which typically those would be the types of operations that you would see OSHA emphasis programs for, et cetera. Much like Mark talked about briefly relative to machine guarding, OSHA has an emphasis program right now for amputations. As he talked to, meaning you may not have anything special going on at your establishment to where you're having complaints, you're having injuries you have to report, and things like that. However, they will be doing inspections, program inspections, where what they'll do is they'll look at your NAICS code, and based off of your NAICS code for your business, say, you know what, that type of business typically would have these types of machines we're looking for, and therefore generate a list where they could be doing inspections. So if a business submits a request and we know they're included in those emphasis programs, we give them higher priority to come on site and provide them services. We do honor large scope businesses requests also, but typically they're limited scope, so we're not going to maybe focus on as many items. And we obviously give the priority to the smaller businesses before we would go out to businesses that maybe would have a larger corporate footprint and those types of things. Here's some examples of some of the free safety and health services we perform. So much of the work we could do on site, physical hazard evaluations, full or limited. What that indicates is the level of engagement you want from us. The business is the client that submits a request to us for service is always in control of the scope of what we're looking at. So you can invite us on site and say, hey, Dave, you know what? We want to look at everything. We want to look at safety, health, all the regulations, look at our programs, our trainings, do a walkthrough, look at it all. You may limit it to say, hey, Dave, we participated in this webinar from Mark, and now I kind of have some questions over about this specific press we have. Can you just look at that? I don't want to get into hazard communication, noise dosimetries, all that stuff. I just want you to look at this press. We could do that as well. You're always in the control of scope of what we're looking at when we come out. If you're interested in some of the other things that we do, when we do come on site, we can do industrial hygiene exposure monitoring, which would be potentially noise dosimetries, air sampling for exposures and so forth, assess your written programs, and development assistance, meaning we have templates for a lot of that stuff. So if you're looking for a training, looking for a particular program, especially if we identify a gap, relative to the regulatory requirement, we have some free stuff we can give you for that to help get you up to speed. Assess, like I mentioned, your trainings that you're doing on site. Oftentimes we'll do OSHA inspection compliance assistance post-inspection. So let's say an inspector comes out and they cite you for machine guarding on a particular machine. Once you get to the point that you've received your citation, you've come to terms with the area office, meaning, yes, we formally or informally agreed that here's going to be the monetary citation, if any. We're going to correct that hazard. Here's the due date. Here's all that stuff. Once all that's settled, you can request for us to come out and assist you in how to correct that hazard. So we could do that also for free. Once again, everything we do is for free. No charge associated with anything, which, even includes the, sending the air sample to the lab. We take care of all that for you. Next thing would be safety and health management system program evaluation. So some businesses, as you advance in your safety culture, and you may feel, hey, look, I think we're pretty up to speed relative to from a regulatory standpoint, our programs, our trainings, our hazards, on the shop floor. Could you maybe take a look at our system that we have established for managing safety and health and see if there are any recommendations you'd have for us? So we do that also. Offsite, meaning you could always, like Mark had mentioned, where you could give them a call, send them an email. You could do the same thing for us. You could always call our number when in our email and everything. I'll show you at the end, and just ask a question, compliance related, general question, whatever it may be. We offer presentations and webinars on, general safety and health management on specific topics, depending on, what your needs are, what your industry groups needs are. We offer all that stuff. And then we also do some virtual assessments, which we've kind of expanded upon a little bit once COVID kicked in, where we could do virtually a lot of the programs, the training assessments we could do offsite through Zoom and features like that. And even to a certain extent, we can do some offsite hazard assessments if you have the capabilities to maybe take a laptop on the shop floor and in real time provide us with some videos of some hazards or areas you'd like us to look at. So we even can do some of that stuff. All of the consultants that you would be working with through our program are all faculty members in the Safety Science Department at IUP. However, with that, we do cover the whole state. So we have faculty members that are in the Safety Science Department at IUP that work strictly with OSHA consultation that live in the Scranton area, Philadelphia area, Harrisburg. All faculty at IUP, maybe on campus once or twice a year, but we're doing this stuff full time. We're on site trying to help businesses out. And that's both general industry and construction. All of our faculty that work with the OSHA consultation program, we're all board certified CSPs, CIHs, so qualified, many years experience. And like I mentioned earlier, we're strategically located throughout Pennsylvania. So what that does is it kind of helps us provide a quicker turnaround to requests that would come in from businesses. Any work you do with us, it's 100% confidential. So if you call us with a question, email us, have us come out and do an air sample, do a hazard assessment, whatever it is, we do not share that information with OSHA. So they have no access to who submits requests, who's asking questions, any of that stuff. It's completely confidential between us and you. And actually, it's codified in the regulations that businesses that request consultation aren't permitted. We're not permitted to give that information to OSHA enforcement, lawyers pursuing liability cases. Any written reports or documentation we provide you are yours. We're protected from subpoenas with providing that to any lawyers, judges, whatever it may be in any type of litigation. You're free to do whatever you want with that information we give you. We're just not permitted to provide it to anybody. So 100% confidential. Unlike enforcement, we don't issue citations, fines, penalties. The difference is you have to request our service. So where the folks on OSHA enforcement could come knock on your door and say, hey, your business is included in this emphasis, and now we have some questions about your machines, we'll never do that. So we don't come on site. We won't solicit you directly. You have to request the service. If you do that, and we identify hazards. We don't issue citations, fines, penalties, anything like that, as long as you agree to correct the serious hazards. That's kind of the catch. You have to request the service. If you do that, we'll come on site and help you if you agree to correct the serious hazards by the mutually agreed upon due date that we'll come up with. And let me go back one real quick. Another benefit to that is if you do request the service, and the scope of the visit that you have us looking at is included in an OSHA emphasis program, and they happen to come on site to do a program inspection. So a random inspection, meaning they're not there because there was an employee complaint, some type of catastrophic event or anything like that. It's just, hey, your name popped up on our list. We suspect you have some machines, for example, and we'd like to take a look at them. If they come on site to do that, and you're actively working with us, meaning you've had us on site to look at whatever they want to include in the scope of their visit, and we've identified some hazards and you're working on correcting those, they won't do the inspection. And we leave you documentation to prove that when we leave. So you have to request the service. You have to agree to correct the serious hazards we find. But while you're in that process of working with us, you're exempt from programmed OSHA inspections. So that's kind of another give back to the employer to being proactive. One other thing I'd like to just mention real quick is it's a recognition program called SHARP, and this is who I specifically work with this program through the OSHA consultation program. What SHARP is, it's a safety and health achievement recognition program for businesses that manage to have exemplary safety and health programs. So we come on site, assess their safety and health management system, provide a score. Based off of that score and their OSHA rates, we could potentially apply for businesses to be in the SHARP program, which is very similar to, a lot of you may have heard of VPP, which is the Voluntary Protection Program for larger businesses. So it's a recognition program for businesses that are able to successfully manage safety and health. And the businesses that reach that achievement, we actually can get them deferred from programmed OSHA inspections for periods of up to 3 years. Currently, we have about 45 businesses in Pennsylvania that are enrolled in that program. So just kind of another give back to employers that oftentimes have used the service year after year and have managed to, over a period of time, get pretty darn successful at managing safety and health. It's just another a recognition program for them. So I'd like to mention that as well for some of the folks out there that may not be aware of that. Anybody that would like to request assistance, there's our phone number there. Probably the best thing to do, and what I'd recommend, is go to our website, and there's a link there you can see I have circled, request consultation. You can click that link. It takes you right to a simple request form. You fill that out, submit it, and what will happen is that will go to one of our admins, and that are continuously monitoring that page. And based off of what your needs are, where you're located in the state, they'll assign consultants to you, who then at that point you'll get notification, hey, we got your request, here's who you've been assigned, and it's just between you and them to schedule your visit and or determine what your needs are and the next step to move forward. For additional overview on that webpage, we have kind of a how consultation works. There's a 3-part video there, and they're really quick videos. Just walks you through the request phase, opening conference, closing conference, how the whole thing kind of lays out. So you can get a little more info there. And if you scroll to the bottom of that homepage, we have some testimonials on there for businesses that have used the program in the past and have had success. That just kind of talks a little bit about their experiences, what they thought of the process, etc. So if you go to the webpage, you can put a request in from there, kind of see a couple tutorial videos on how the process works, see some testimonials, and hopefully would put you in a position where you'd feel comfortable submitting a request. In addition, I'd like to throw out, and I know Mark had mentioned a PowerPoint training from the Department of Labor. There are free safety training webinars that they do through the Pennsylvania Training for Safety and Health. It's called the PATHS program in the Department of Labor. If you pull up their website, just to give them a quick plug, they'll put out schedules for trainings. Some of them they do on site, a lot of them they do via webinar. All you need to do is go on and sign up. So there's a ton of good, hundreds of different topics they'll do on there. So I'd highly recommend taking a look at their webpage. some businesses I've worked with, kind of their safety leads will do those trainings. Some businesses do them with the safety committee. So they'll pick a couple topics a year and go through them. Some businesses get all the employees involved. So just a ton of good training resources out there for free. Does anybody have any questions?
If anybody has questions, they can throw it into the chat. They can raise
Absolutely.
their hand and put it into the Q&A, or one of three.
And there's my my cell phone number and my email address. So if we get off today and 5 minutes from now, you have a question about our program, feel free to give me a ring or send me an email.
Super.
And I was just going to mention in that chat, I did put a couple of web links to the companies that sell the machine guards and shields. And again, I'm not plugging the company. I mean, Granger's a great company, and they do have, if you type in, machine guard shields, there's a whole page full of them that popped up. So, but if you need more information on that, please reach out.
Great. Well, thank you both for this great information. We all appreciate it. Just a few reminders. We will be sending out the PowerPoints. I will also be sending out a survey, and the survey is very important to all of us because it helps us to understand what you liked, what you didn't like, and then also I would encourage you to let us know what you want to see training on. We do a survey at the end of every year to identify what topics we will be training on the following year. I know Mark mentioned that in his presentation, but feedback from you ongoing is always very helpful to us. So you can do that always by emailing me, and you'll get my information as well through my PowerPoint, as well as replying to our email. So you'll probably be hearing from me either before the end of today with this information or tomorrow. And in the meantime, again, we're all here to help your businesses succeed, and we want to help you. All of our programs are provided at no cost, and we look forward to helping you, as well as looking forward to future webinars. We have another one coming up next month, and right now it's escaping me on the topic, but we'll have OSHA webinars monthly now through the end of the year. So with that said, we'll wrap up right on time. So thank you all for being with us, and we will see you again next month. Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen. Have a great day, everyone.